Today we're covering Chapter 9, Lesson 3, which is making predictions about a population. This is in textbook page 723 if you have a textbook at home. Statistics, which is what Chapter 9 is about, statistics deal with collecting, organizing, and interpreting data. Data is just information. A survey is a method for collecting data. And a population is a group being studied. For example, students. My population might be students. And then a sample might be part of the group or part of the population. So if my population was students, a sample group might be first period. So let's look at the example. It says the students and Mr. Blackwell's class brought photos from their summer break. The chart shows how many students brought each type of photo. What is the probability that a student brought a photo taken at a theme park? Now, if you'll think back to January when we talked about probability is just a fraction. So we're looking for the probability of a theme park picture. Well, I can see that theme park was 11, but for a fraction, I'm going to need a total as well. So I need to add all of these up. And if I add them up, I get 28. So the probability of getting a theme park picture is 11 out of 28. Okay, let's look at example 2. If Mr. Blackwell were to survey all of his 140 students, how many would you predict would bring a campground photo? Okay, now if it says predict, that means we need to set up a proportion. And a proportion is two fractions equal to each other. So first we start with the probability of what they were looking for, which was a campground. And the probability of a campground is 4 out of 28. So that's my first fraction. And then we need to put in our new total. So the new total goes on the bottom on the other side. Now to solve a proportion, we can cross multiply and then divide, or we can look for a relationship and see, can I multiply 28 times something and get 140? I'm not sure. Let's try simplifying. Simplifying always helps. So what can I simplify 4 and 28 by? 4. So 4 divided by 4 makes 1. 28 divided by 4 makes 7. And then, can I do something to 7 to get to 140? Yes, I can multiply 7 times 20 to get to 140. So then I need to do the same thing on top. 1 times 20 makes 20. So 20 is the answer. We were looking for the missing number so we can make a prediction. If I were to survey 140 students based on the sample, 20 of those should provide a picture of a campground. So 20 people is the answer. Okay, let's look at an extra example. On the guided practice, there's an example about a survey that Jeremy took of his favorite movies. So he asked several people what their favorite movies are. This first question is very important. It says, how many people did Jeremy use for his sample? So we need a total. We can't write fractions without a total. So we need to add up how many people did Jeremy talk to. So 12 plus 3 plus 20 plus 15 adds up to 50. So he had a total of 50 people in his survey. Number 3 here says, if Jeremy were to survey 250 people, how many would you predict would name comedy? So from his survey, it looks like 20 out of 50 picked comedy. And if we're going to predict something, we need to set up a proportion. And the new total is going to be 250. So we're trying to solve for what would go up here. What could I do to 50 to get to 250? I could multiply times 5. Then I can do that on top. 20 times 5 makes 100. So I can predict that if Jeremy were to go ask 250 people, 100 of those would say comedy was their favorite. Let's look at some of the questions on your independent practice. The first two are just basic. You're finding the probability. On number 1 and on number 2, you're making a prediction. So probability will be a fraction that is simplified. And number 2 will be a proportion because you're making a prediction. Okay. Now, number 3 and number 4 is kind of like what we did yesterday. They both say predict, so you could set up a proportion. But again, if it has a percent sign in it, you can always just multiply. So you can set up a proportion, or you could just multiply the number they gave you times the percent. And remember, you'll need to round that because we don't want to cut up humans. We have to have a whole human. Okay, down here on the bottom, you're completing the chart. So you're going to need a total so you can make some predictions. And if we add all of these up, we get 24. And we are predicting for 528. So we need to figure out what would we do to 24 to get 528. Might need to go over here and divide that out to see what we multiplied by. So 24 doesn't go into 5, but it does go into 52 twice, because 2 times 24 is 48. And then we subtract and we get 4 left over. Bring down the 8. 24 goes into 48 twice, because 2 times 24 is 48, with nothing left over. So that means we're multiplying 24 times 22 to get 528. So think of these as a very strange fraction. This would be 5 over 24. So if I multiplied 24 times 22 to get the new total, I need to multiply 5 times 22 to get his new number. And so on all the way up. So if you're making a prediction, you're going to need to multiply by something.